In this lesson, I wanted to introduce you to CSS styling, cascading style sheets. And we're actually not going to be dealing with style sheets. We're going to be dealing with certain styles in what's called inline styles. And this is just a way to style, to add color, depth, dimension to HTML elements. Up until this point, most of the stuff we've been doing has been limited to just right, like you see over here, a static document that just flows from top to bottom. Well, obviously in the world of the web, there's a lot of times where you have two columns, something's floating over here, or an image is floating over here. And so most of that is controlled with CSS. And there is a simple way to add CSS to HTML elements using the attribute called style. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go ahead and give this H1 element an attribute, a new one. So like we've done with other attributes, we put it inside the H1 element, and I'm going to say style equals. Now in here we can put any kind of CSS, any kind of styling, which is another course, but I want you to be familiar with it so when you see it you know what it's doing. So in this case I'm going to give it a color of gray. And now you notice over here this is turned to gray. I can also say I want to give it a border bottom 1 pixel solid, and I want it to be gray as well. And there you go, there's my border. If I wanted to change it to another color like a lighter gray, I could. So there's my border. And this is how we can add styling. This is called inline styling, which is not the best way to do it, but it is a way that you can quickly do it, especially if you're in a CMS and you have some limitations on how to style things. So let me show you some more. I'm gonna say H2 style, and I'm gonna say this color is red, and now it's red, and it has no margin at all. And again, this isn't a lesson on CSS. I just want you to be familiar with the style attribute. And I could even do this. I could even say style, and I'm going to give it a width of 100 pixels. And that's maybe too little here. And I'm going to float it to the left. And now you see we have two paragraphs on top of each other. Let's say, give it a little bit of margin here. And now we have a decent amount of margin. So that's just one example of using the style attribute for changing up text. And in a future course, there'll be a lot more in-depth tutorials and training on using CSS and actually separating this from the content, because this is actually not the best practice. There's actually a better way to do it. You put it in another file and you can style all these elements at once and not have to copy and paste this over and over and over again.
All right, hang on there, Rick. I know we're just having an intro into CSS, but of course the ones who are listening and trying to learn HTML, I'm sure that they're trying to learn it for a purpose and will want to quickly get into learning CSS. And maybe before they're able to go on to the next course of CSS learning, is there a place that you can think of off the top of your head where we could go to, where the people that are learning could go to learn about some of these attributes like width and float left and margin right, so that they can begin studying and begin seeing some of the different attributes that they're able to use within CSS?
Yeah, there's a lot of good resources. Actually, let me go ahead and open up a web page here and show you here. One is actually called HTML Dog, and this one's pretty good. So it has HTML and CSS, but it has some good references on applying CSS, different values, colors, text, margins, things like that. Another one is the W3 Schools. Some of it's a little old, but you could say, let's see, where's CSS at? I don't know, it's here somewhere. That are blind. Oh, there it is right there. So they have all the stuff you can learn about CSS as well. So if you want to go ahead and jump into that, feel free um, for learning more CSS. So that's it for an introduction to the style attribute that you can apply to pretty much any HTML element.